Okay, in this video I'm going to take a look at the formation of the contract in the purchase or sale of a property. So how is a contract actually formed and what's necessary? In order to have an enforceable contract, there are 5 things necessary. Firstly, the parties must have the legal capacity to enter into a contract. Legal capacity deals with issues like, for example, a person who is not 18, who's 16 or 17, does not have the legal capacity to enter into a contract. Also, somebody who has some form of mental defect or maybe labouring under drunkenness or something of that nature doesn't have the legal capacity to enter into a contract, because there is the risk that they don't know what they are doing. Number 2, they must intend legal relations. In other words, it must be more than just a chat or a discussion or a negotiation or an invitation to treat. They must enter or must intend to create legal relations in order to have an enforceable contract coming into being. Number 3, the contractual terms must be certain. 4, there must be offer and acceptance. And 5, there must be consideration. And consideration is essentially something of value. For the sale of land or real property, it was the case that a written note or memorandum was made, which was signed by the person to be charged with the contract. That was necessary, courtesy of or pursuant to the Statute of Frauds Act of 1695, I think it was. However, the doctrine of part performance lessened that requirement somewhat. Part performance is an equitable doctrine, and basically it says that if an oral contract for sale of land or property where no note or memorandum exists, that it could actually be enforced by the party seeking to enforce the contract if that party has partly performed his actions under the contract and the other party has acquiesced or stood idly by in those acts of performance. In other words, the other party has stood idly by, has let party A perform his part of the contract, and then party B turns around and says there's no contract because there's no note. The doctrine of part performance allows party A, who has performed his part of the contract, to enforce the contract even in the absence of a written note or memorandum. The Land and Conveyancing Law Reform Act then of 2009 repealed the Land or the Statute of Frauds Act of 1695. Basically, Section 51 of this 2009 Act says that no action shall be brought to enforce any contract for the sale of land unless the agreement on which such action is brought or some memorandum or note of it is in writing and signed by the person against whom the action is brought or that person's authorised agent. So this is a reminder again that there must be in writing a note or memorandum of the contract. However, you'll see there subsection 1 does not affect the law relating to part performance or other equitable doctrines. So the equitable doctrine of part performance still holds. But the normal rule, the default position is that to enforce a contract for the sale of land or property, real property, you need a written note or memorandum. Then if we look at what should be in the note or memorandum, there are at least 4 things which should be in it: the parties, the property, the consideration, and any other provisions agreed between the parties. If this is the case, then an enforceable contract comes into being. It's called an open contract. The reason it's called an open contract is because all of the provisions agreed between the parties are not included. However, a closed contract, by contrast, is one in which the parties set out all of the terms of the agreement in a formal agreement. And in Ireland nowadays, the standard form contract for sale produced by the Law Society of Ireland is used, and this contains a lot of general conditions, many general conditions, and then the parties agree special conditions between themselves, and then that contract will be a closed contract because all of the provisions of the agreement between the parties is contained in the contract. Hope you find this video useful. If you do, you might be interested in subscribing to my YouTube channel, and you may be interested also in giving the thumbs up down below. Thank you for watching.